Okay, yeah. So, welcome to another episode of the Football Is Groovy Podcast with Dev and Matt. And this is a special one that comes right after the Tottenham Liverpool game. So, we're going to mainly talk about that. But first, we've got a couple other games that we're just going to run through.
Yeah, I think started off with a bit of a surprise from Chelsea's side. I think everyone expected them to pull through, but
Yeah.
they surprised us all with their result there. I don't think anyone was actually expecting that. Certainly did us a favour.
Yeah. Opens up the gap a little bit.
Yeah.
And brought the lower teams closer. So, it's actually quite a tight top 5 right now.
Well, and not even in the top 5. If you just look at the top 10.
Yeah, true.
If you go, because I think it's the Manchester clubs, if I remember correctly, are currently sitting there. The gap between them and Liverpool, I think at the moment is only 8. And keeping in mind they've got games in hand.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So it's actually quite remarkable. I think if Manchester United win their game in hand, assuming, hypothetically, then Tottenham to win to play another game up until that point, then United could actually go into second base just purely on those points. So the gap it's very small and it goes far down the table.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, though.
I mean, it's still... I mean, it's still early days in the season. I mean, we're a third of the way through now. So it's interesting that, half of the table is still so closely packed.
Yeah.
I think the only outlier in the entire table is Sheffield United.
Yeah. I mean, definitely not as good as last season. But, yeah, so Chelsea-Wolves, a game that I think we both thought Chelsea would take. And Wolves being down, not having Jimenez in the squad, a kind of different attacking team to last season, managed to pull something out of the hat. And
yeah, listen, when Giroud scored his goal, which, the way that the manner in which he scored it to get in front of the defender then get it on target with such power, you could just see Wolves' goalkeeper, Rui Patricio, he didn't even know anything about it. He nearly pulled off a fantastic save, so kudos to him for that. But I think 1-0 up after that, with the way Wolves' season had been going, I did not expect them to finish the way that they did. Obviously they won it very, very late.
Yeah,
but
a win's a win. Yeah, so that was one of the games. Then after that, there was Brighton Fulham that resulted in a draw, which
0-0.
I wouldn't say it's a bad run of games for Fulham in all time. I'm saying the last 2 games. Draw against Liverpool, draw against Brighton.
Yeah,
so
I think I would have said bad. Brighton would have win that easy. But yeah, like you said, draw against Liverpool and then another draw now. 2 points now against probably 2 of the more informed teams in the league at the moment. So if I was Scott Parker, I definitely think that's a good point now.
Yeah.
An even better point against Liverpool for them. So maybe this is when Fulham come alive and we see
you never know.
Some good football from Craven
At some
Cottage.
point it'll happen.
Yeah. Other big surprise for me now from these midweek matches was the Leicester-Everton game. Obviously both teams have been playing well this season. Both of them are in form.
I'd say they fluctuated a little bit. It hasn't been too consistent, but they are playing relatively well.
In Everton's, with Everton, the fluctuation is a good way to describe them.
Yeah.
Obviously, they started off very well.
Yeah.
And then they kind of dropped, and now they're finding their form again. I'd noticed Jordan Pickford was dropped for this match now.
Interesting.
So I found that quite interesting. But then with Leicester, they didn't have the greatest of starts to the season, but they're slowly finding their feet again. Vardy scoring goals again. Madison's coming into form. Kasper Schmeichel made some very good saves as well.
Leicester have a good team.
They do.
And they're more than capable of being, at least in my opinion, maybe not exactly a title contender, but they're a top 4 team. At least. So it's exciting to see teams play well. I'm glad that they haven't fallen off and we're just seeing the typical sort of teams sitting at the top.
Well, yeah, it's almost like there's no longer a
like
top
a hierarchy.
6.
Yeah,
there's the traditional top 6. Yes, whilst they'll always be there, they're not in positions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which I guess kind of brings us to the next match Probably the only other match that gave me joy this weekend was Arsenal going down to...
Burnley?
No, to Southampton.
Yes.
Southampton's goal scored by their own man, Theo Walcott, on his return to the Emirates.
Yeah.
No, shame. Arsenal, they've had a shocking start to the season. Sitting in 15th, struggling to get points at home, struggling to get points away. If I remember the correct study, before Aubameyang scored his goal, Theo Walcott had scored as many goals as him, Lacazette, and Willian at the Emirates this season.
Crazy.
No, I think obviously, they've clearly got some kind of a discipline issue there. Three red cards. I saw a funny joke saying, interesting matchup of the season is Arsenal's wins are 4 compared to their red cards, which are 3. So we might see a resurgence in the red card team there. So it's an interesting season. I know we chatted briefly about Arteta and, is he going to stay at the club?
By his own choice, yes, but are there other...
Obviously, he's got that tie to Arsenal of being one of the fan favourites at the club during his playing days. So, does he get sacked? Does he walk away? I think it's tough because he's set up against Pep Guardiola. He's beaten them. He's set up against Liverpool. He's beaten them. So, is that just the players coming through on the big matches where they put their all into it and they get the result, or is that proof that Arteta can set up his Arsenal side to do the job?
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure. It feels like a puzzle at this point. It's difficult to really pinpoint what the cause of this is, because the team is not that different to what it was last season. No, if anything, they got an addition on the right wing.
Well, with Willian now, I mean, when he moved from Chelsea, you and I were both very surprised at that, and we both thought that Arsenal had gotten themselves a very good player there.
Yeah.
Despite pushing the ages a bit now, Willian can still score goals. He can still contribute assists. So, but the fact that he's just made little to no contribution to that side, and it's shocking.
But at the same time, neither has Aubameyang or Lacazette. So it's difficult to say, you can't really say Willian is not performing.
No, it's the entire team. I mean, if you look at their front three, whether it's Willian, Lacazette, Aubameyang, or if Pepe is in there, it's not a bad front four to have.
I was quite excited.
I was quite nervous for that front four.
Because we saw Williams going to Arsenal. Okay, that front three is dangerous.
Yeah.
Given what they've been able to do in the past, this, to me, that looks really threatening. But something's just not gone right. Whether it's inside the club or management or something, but something's not right.
No, there's something not right there. I think he's their director of football, or I'm not too sure what position he holds at the club, but Edu. He said that their problem is that they're lacking a midfield with creativity and drive, but all fingers point to a certain German who doesn't even sit on the bench. He's not on the Premier League side. I don't understand how someone like Mesut Ozil is not in a manager's plans.
Yeah,
I know he had issues with his work rate before, at the end of Wenger's reign, at the start of Emery's reign.
On that exact note, though, I don't know if we probably saw the same thing. It was about when Ancelotti was at AC Milan and he was dealing with Ronaldo Lima, remember? And there's that whole thing where it's like, do you want me to run or do you want me to score goals?
Yes.
Right? This is the exact same thing. I'm going to put that argument on Ozil as well, because it's the classic argument of, does the manager come in and tell the players to play to his style, or does he make use of what he has, and he has to be a good manager to make use of the assets that he has?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. I think, obviously, when a manager comes into the side, he has to make do with the players that he's got when he arrives there.
Yeah. You can't fire the whole team.
You can't fire the whole team and bring in the whole team straight away.
Yeah.
So you have to make do with what you got. Obviously, Ozil was already bad-blooded Arsenal when Emery was there. So I don't know if that just carried on when Arteta arrived.
Must have gone deeper. Than...
There must be something deep with that, because in my opinion, I would have Ozil walk into Tottenham
any day
and be the number 10
any day.
If he's... everyone's seen the memes and the jokes about how he assists.
Yes.
So to have a player like that, and that for me is the kind of guy that Arsenal need right now.
Absolutely.
Because if you look at their midfield, obviously Xhaka's now suspended. Then you've got El Neni, who's not a creative player. You've got Dani Ceballos, who probably is the next best option to Mesut Ozil, but for some reason he's not picked on the team sheet to start. And then you've got the youngsters like Nelson and Willock and those kind of guys. So
yeah, it's very strange. I can't really wrap my head around it, because imagine a manager rocked up at Barcelona and was like, you know what, Messi, we don't need you. Like, it just doesn't make sense, right? I'm not saying Ozil's Messi here, but my point is he is undoubtedly, in his prime, he was arguably the best midfielder in the world.
Oh, sure, he could do what anyone else could do.
When he was at Real Madrid and he was linking up with Ronaldo, you were seeing things. I mean, there was a reason why everyone made these assist jokes, because the guy was insane. But that's why I don't really understand why or how a manager can do that. There must be some sort of deeper relationship problem, that something happened and they just said, you know, like, when we're just not going to play you. But
the confusing thing for me is, if there are these problems, and they've been around now for years now.
Yeah.
This is the first season kind of thing where this has happened. Why not sell him? Why not let him go? Why keep him there but don't play him?
Well,
that's what I don't know.
That's the exact. So the only other example I have of that was Sanchez when he was at Manchester United, and the thing was that his wages were so high. I think he was getting paid 600k a week or something. Well, he actually, as far as I understand, he was, because he went to Inter, but before he went to Inter, he was also just not playing. They weren't playing him, but they weren't selling him because they know he's an asset. So it's like, if they were going to sell him, they had to sell him to a club that's outside the Premier League. I know that clubs do that. They don't want to sell their players to other Premier League teams. I remember
when we sold Christian Eriksen, I was pleading for us not to sell him to another Premier League side.
Right, because you know how good he is.
Exactly.
So the point is that you try and off him, but then when you're not saying, or when you're excluding the Premier League, you're basically saying there's about 3 clubs that can actually put an offer. And then they went with a really, really crappy situation where he went to Inter, and Inter were paying 3 million of the 12 million, I don't remember if it was pounds or euros per year of his salary. And then Man U is still paying 9 million of the 12. Now I think he is there.
I think he's been bought.
I think he's been bought, I'm not sure, but it's the same situation. His salary is actually, or his wage is actually quite high, 300k a week, as far as the last time I checked. So it's the same sort of situation. Like, you sell him, you know how good he is, but it's in such just bad taste, all of it.
No, it is. I think he's proven that he's a world-class player.
Yeah.
So it's tough, though, because I guess, do you look at the player or do you look at the club as a whole? And I guess at that kind of level, you have to look at the club as a whole. Personally, for me, I would set differences aside and play him. Obviously, it's tough now, excluding him from the Premier League side, the squad. But if you've got someone there, he can pull the strings in any match.
Yeah.
So I find it a bit confusing with what's gone on. But like you said, there must be something deeper going on.
It has to be.
Yeah.
If anything, you saw from the Tottenham documentary how, I don't want to say political, but really things can get, there are always underlying reasons. Oh, someone has some agenda or motive that they don't want this person to play. So the point is, a player like that should be playing, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not he does play. I don't think they'll play him, but
yeah, it's, I guess we don't know what goes on behind the doors there. So whether or not he stays at Arsenal now that he's actually been frozen out of the squad, I guess it would be silly for him. If he wants to play football, I don't see why he would stay. But, I mean, he's sitting pretty, earning a nice salary, doing nothing.
Yeah.
So, he's making Arsenal look like a fool of a club.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that brings us on to the big topic.
Yes.
The one close to my heart.
So, basically, where do we start with this? Tottenham lost 2-1 to Liverpool in the last minute of the game. And there's a lot to talk about because it was a really good game.
No, it was a good game, especially for the neutral. I think as a Liverpool player, probably a bit frustrating having so much possession and not being able to break Spurs down as easily as what they would have liked. From a Tottenham side, very stressful, 90 minutes of heart attacks. But yeah, again, Jose Mourinho sets up his side to play on the counter-attack. Interesting, setting up with a 4-4-2 formation now. as opposed to the normal 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3 that he normally goes with. So that for me was a bit of an interesting surprise. I guess you could say it worked for the most part. Obviously, their first goal was, you could say it was quite lucky how it looped up off the deflection and then into the back of the net. Lloris, maybe, I don't know if he could have done a bit more. Maybe he thought it was going over and it just dipped a lot more than he thought, but he kind of looked like he was going to go for it, then he stopped. Yeah. So I don't quite know what was up with that, but...
Yeah, I was very confused by that.
Yeah,
because you can very clearly see that he's going for it. He is moving. It's not like he's very stationary. He's moving. Then he pauses, looks, and just starts to watch the ball. And I don't understand why... Yeah, like I honestly put that to the keeper, a little bit to the keeper, because you never know if he would have been able to get it had he jumped. Yeah. And he has a long reach. He might have been able to. It was really, really close. I mean, it was coming in right at the top corner.
Would have been a very good save if he managed to get to it, but I guess unless you're a goalkeeper in his position,
yeah, we'll never know.
You never know.
So that was the one thing. I wouldn't say that it was luck, that the goal was lucky. It was the result of a build-up of pressure, and True. I think they just forced the ball into the net. Like, it was one of those, when you apply enough pressure, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
But obviously, being a deflection, and it wasn't a really, wasn't the result of, I'd say, pure skill or great play. There is an element of just kind of hard feelings towards that goal, because it's not.
Yeah, no, look,
it wasn't the best.
Whether it's FIFA or real life, I have no problem conceding a good goal.
Absolutely.
Whether it's individual skill, a good build-up play, counter-attack, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So for a deflected goal like that, it kind of just loops and over that.
It's hard to watch.
It's tough to take, especially against a side like Liverpool, who you can capitalize on those kind of things.
Yeah.
But good to see Tottenham straight away. There was a couple of minutes after that goal where they looked very shaky and looked like they could concede more than...
It could have been 3 in that little space there.
But to then, as they've been doing the whole season, get the ball on the counter-attack very quick. In terms of timing for that possible offside for Son, you literally couldn't get any closer to that.
Jeez, yeah. I mean, it was down literally to the shoelaces.
Literally, honestly. But great finish from Son. I think most people would have expected him to go far post, but Alisson came out, got
really well. He came out really well.
Son, one chance in the game for him, and he slotted it brilliantly.
One shot, one goal.
Literally.
So, I mean, it was a great finish. One thing maybe that's interesting was that we've talked a little bit about Trent Alexander-Arnold getting exposed at the back, and this was another one of those situations.
Yes.
So I do wonder a little bit about that, because it constantly looked like an opening that could be exploited.
Well, it was interesting to watch because when Spurs turned over the ball and Lo Celso picked the ball up, you could see Alexander-Arnold pointing to Curtis Jones to fill in his position there at right back.
Yeah.
Obviously now not in his natural position, and Trent tried tracking Lo Celso down, and then you watch Son and one of the other Spurs players cross paths. And Jones leaves Son and goes with the other Spurs player, opening up that gap.
Yeah.
So now you have to ask the question from Alexander-Arnold.
Was it the right move?
Was it the right move? Was it the mature move to now put one of the youngsters to mark arguably one of the best wingers in the Premier League or even in the world now in Son?
Yeah.
So he got caught out. He's got the pace to get back. So it's a tough one.
But by the time that happened, he was so far ahead. I mean, it could have been any player. Son had a lot of time to make up his mind of how he was going to do it.
No, exactly.
But I think bottom line was that he shouldn't have come in, because it looked kind of unnatural. He should have stayed.
In the midfield almost
into like a very
position kind of thing.
Very weird.
It was odd for him.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was maybe just trying to break the counter attack up early and wasn't quick enough to actually get there.
Yeah. Had he rushed up on him and made the tackle, it would have. I understand the logic, break the play right there, but it just didn't pan out that way.
Obviously didn't work out the way that he wanted it to work out, but not the first time he's been exposed for doing something like that. Probably won't be the last time. He's young, super talented defender and attacking defender, but he's human. He made a mistake, and Spurs capitalized on that one mistake.
That's the nature of the game, though. You can't make Can't make mistakes at this level. I mean, this game was kind of to me, one of the better examples of professional football at its best, that if there's a chance, it's most likely going to be taken.
Well, we've mentioned it before, talking when Spurs set up against City, when Spurs set up against Chelsea, and obviously giving the other team possession now. I mean, Liverpool undoubtedly had the bulk of the possession, no question about it now. But at the end of the day, they didn't take all of their chances that they had. I mean, Mane missed a couple of chances. Salah, Firmino, Jones had a shot. So they could have easily have made it 5-6 goals by half time.
Yeah.
But not capitalizing on their chance, and nearly came back to bite them. If it weren't for the fact that Spurs with Bergwijn and Kane didn't capitalize on their chances, it could have been a very different result.
Yeah.
I think if... I've said it before, if you want to play this kind of counter-attacking game where you're only going to have a handful of chances, you have to be like Son and you have to have one shot, one goal. Bergwijn, he had 2 good breakaways where the first one, good defense by, I can't remember if it's Reece Williams or Robertson, just kept pushing him out wide and kept him off balance. He just flung his foot at it and ball went wide. But then the second one, we hit the post. It's like you were saying before we started recording now, if you want to be a world-class player, those are the kind of opportunities you have to take.
Yeah, you take it.
Those are the ones you take in your sleep.
Yeah, there's no debate whether or not that goes in. Because if you imagine Ronaldo in that situation, it's a goal.
Oh, don't even have to go as far as Ronaldo. If you imagine Son.
Yeah,
Son probably could have slotted that.
Yeah. So Son's world-class though. But the point is, these kind of attackers, if you put them in that position, it goes in. You don't question it. It is a goal. One-on-one with the keeper is a goal.
Yes.
That is how the sport works. So it's quite frustrating to see at that level, especially with this sort of high stakes, especially for Bergwijn, for him wanting to solidify a spot because I don't think he has absolutely solidified his spot in the starting lineup. There is still Lucas Moura that can be there.
Yeah, so it's an interesting topic, that one, because obviously there's Lucas who's been there for a while now, and everyone knows the player that Lucas is.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is you've got Gareth Bale now.
Yeah.
Who can also slot into that position there.
Yeah.
And he's been out now with illness, so obviously he's not in contention. But I've read a few reports saying that the reason why Gareth Bale is not starting for Tottenham is because of Bergwijn's work effort and how hard he tracks back for the team. And if you watch him 100%. Sprinting across the pitch, getting up into players, tracking back.
100% agree with that. That's why I'm not trying to knock him, because I appreciate a workload more than the finishing. But at some point, obviously, goals wins games. So
no, of course.
You want to see... I wanted to see him score it. I want for him to see... Yes. He scored the goal against Liverpool. Yes. That would take the lead. So that's just the disappointing part. Yeah. But those goals should be converted. And had that gone in, I think the game would have been very different.
It would have been very... Obviously, Liverpool then would have gone into overdrive and certainly would have...
They would have been more exposed.
For that equaliser in that scenario then. But, exactly like you say, then they're exposed. Then Tottenham make it 3-1. Or Liverpool score and it's 2-2 now. And then you set up a real edgy... last 5 minutes, whatever it may be. But Spurs didn't capitalize on their chances, and Bobby Firmino did.
Yeah.
Good header from him, powerful into the corner.
Yeah.
Little slip from AlexanderArnold, so maybe not as easy as it should have been.
But this is the thing, is that it was another late game goal against Tottenham. Yeah. Another one. And granted, the majority of those late game goals came in the one game against West Ham. So, I mean, you guys conceded three in 10 minutes, which is shocking.
Yeah.
So, but there's something there, because it's not the first time. I don't think it's going to be the last time.
No.
And obviously, late game goals are a thing. It's not like Tottenham's unique to this. But what is happening there?
Yeah, because when you think back, obviously the West Ham game, the Liverpool game now, Palace not as late, but still pretty far on in the second half. Does it come down to player mentality, to fitness, concentration? Is it they've got a corner, it's 89 minutes gone, what are the chances of them scoring, kind of thing? Is it something like that? I'd like to think not. Being professional footballers, these are guys who do this day in and day out, and this is literally what they get paid to do.
Yeah.
But like you say, this is becoming a thing for Tottenham now, is conceding these late goals. And it's costing them points. It's not, okay, we were 3-0 up, now it's 3-1.
A lot of points.
3-3, 1-1, 2-1.
Yeah.
It's...
No, you guys could have been 7 points. We had a draw against Liverpool, a win against West Ham, and then another win against Crystal Palace. So
7 points.
7 points, right? Very, very easy points that could have been, that were purely down to Tottenham's own mistakes of just letting it slip.
Correct.
So, yeah. My hot take on this Liverpool game is that Liverpool did not deserve to win it. And I know that it's very debatable, but there was one key thing that some of the commentators were mentioning, or analysts after the game, which was that just because Liverpool had 70 to 80% of the possession, that they deserved to win, and that the idea of controllable, or the style of football that has the most control of the game deserves or should be praised as the better team. I don't think that's necessarily true, because there's nothing worse than watching a game where City has 30 shots and they can't score.
Oh, exactly. So, I think, and it's showing like these games now where Tottenham haven't had possession.
Yeah.
But they've beaten City, they've drawn to Chelsea.
Beat Arsenal.
Nearly
beat
got
Liverpool.
A point against Liverpool. Could have beaten Liverpool.
Yeah.
Shows that it's not obviously possession. Just if you're looking from a pure numbers game, more possession is going to equal more shots, which mean more chances to score. Just from the number side of it.
But at least in hypothetically.
On paper, yes.
It should.
But the way that it's going is Tottenham aren't allowing these teams. They're giving, here, have the ball. We don't want the ball. Yeah. But they're not letting them get in.
Yeah.
Yes, teams are still having chances, but that's just how football goes. Yeah. You're always going to have chances. And Jose's game plan nearly worked again.
Yeah.
He pulled it off against City, pulled it off against Chelsea, pulled it against Arsenal.
Yeah.
Nearly pulled it off against Liverpool. So, obviously, I'm sure a lot of people have heard Jose's comments to Klopp at the end saying the best team lost and all of that kind of stuff. And it's tough because obviously if you're just watching it, you see Liverpool have the ball, you think they're in control, okay, they must be the better side. But Tottenham kept them out, they kept them quiet. Liverpool's shooting was not up to scratch. It wasn't typical Liverpool finishing that we used to.
Yeah.
So whether you could say, I don't think there was a best side. I think it almost comes down to two teams who just played a game of football. And at the end of the day, Liverpool took their chances, Tottenham did it.
That's way too diplomatic.
I'm keeping the emotion at bay here. Trust me, I could go on for hours about that.
No, I get it. I mean, look, I think it was it was one of the better or best games of the season in terms of competitiveness. And,
it was very entertaining
to
watch.
Skill and just high professional football. It was really, really good to watch.
Yeah.
But if you're holding the ball for 70% of the time, I expect you to, at least in the style of how Liverpool plays in this attacking football, to be able to get more chances and get shots on target more, because a lot of the shots that they took were just really not great shots, honestly. I mean, most of the shots that they took were straight at the keeper, and had they been any more to the left or right, it probably would have been a goal. So I just think, the way that Tottenham played seemed to be smarter football. They know who their opponent is, because it's not like this is how they always play. They played very differently against Chelsea, and sure, they didn't score goals. I think that was a tougher game defensively, but they know who their opponent is, and they're playing smart football. So I think, to me, Tottenham was the better team, and it was just really, really unlucky that goal from Bergwijn didn't go in, or that goal from the ball from Harry Kane didn't go in either. Because had that go in, it would have been game over, completely game over. So, but those two chances were very, very clear chances, right?
Yeah.
It was evident. It was like, okay, that was a chance that should have been a goal. Yes. After you watched him miss that, you were like, that should have been a goal. Yeah. But when Jones cut into the box and took that shot, it wasn't as clear. I mean, he still had to work. He still had to finesse that, and he shanked the shot. But it could not have been a goal. You don't know. There's still a lot more work there. It's not as clear that was a...
It's not a one-on-one with the goalkeeper.
Exactly. So I don't think Liverpool had as many chances or chances in that sort of way that made it look like they were arguably the better team.
Yeah, I guess if hypothetically speaking, Bergwijn converted and the match finished 2-1 to Spurs, would you then say Spurs were the better team? Yeah, probably.
Absolutely.
Because then you'd say, their game plan worked again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. Obviously, scoring from a set piece, then your tactics go out the window because that's the point of a set piece now.
Yeah.
So you can't play on the counter attack when you're defending a set piece. So, interesting little debates. One thing that I did pick up from Liverpool was obviously now they're not full strength. You've got Fabinho playing in the backs. You've got Van Dijk. Jones is playing instead of maybe Keita or one of the other midfielders instead of Oxlade-Chamberlain. Or Fabinho even. Also, Thiago obviously hasn't been playing for quite a while now, but the speed and the precision at which Liverpool were passing the ball and moving the ball from side to side.
Yeah.
This is unparalleled, the team who can pass that well.
Yeah. We were looking at all the stats. I don't know if you saw Jones. I think it was 94% pass. And it was like 100 passes that he made in that game. Now, they stringed together a lot of passes, and they played a really high intensity, a high pace, so fast pace. So it's admirable, and it's nice to watch. But, I don't know. Spurs football is also nice to watch, I must be honest. It's nice.
When Spurs get it right, there are a few teams where it's nice to watch the Spurs when they get it right.
Their second half was a lot better than the first half.
15-20 minutes of that second half when Spurs actually came out and were playing Tottenham football.
Yeah, Liverpool couldn't really string together a lot of play.
Which kind of almost then begs the question is, why don't you play like that all the time?
I also would argue that.
If it's working for you. And same thing with the Crystal Palace game, that first half. Spurs had possession, they were dominating, they were on the ball, they were playing the game.
That was like a very high percentage. It was like 70% possession in that game. So,
and then all that went out in the second half of that match, and
it's interesting. I'm not sure if there's specific substitutions that are impacting that game plan. I don't think there is, because I haven't seen, it's like a player comes on and the game plan changes very dramatically, unless it was like you're putting on a defender for an attacker and you're just solidifying the back.
But whether
I don't know.
like obviously, if you're looking at Lo Celso and Bergwijn, two guys who've been tending to play that attacking midfield role for Tottenham now, it's the same game plan whether it's Lo Celso or Ndombele playing.
Yeah.
So is it just Jose now determined to play out from the back and play on the counter attack and give away possession and let the other team have it, or is it something else? Is it Tottenham aren't confident to keep the ball?
Yeah.
I wouldn't think so. They've been so good in possession. You just think back to the start of the season against Southampton when Spurs went 1-0 down and then they got the ball back and then Son scores 4 goals from us keeping the ball. So it's really interesting to see. Is Jose maybe a bit stubborn? Does he not want to change? Does he not want to admit that his tactic is not working? Now he should try and play a bit more aggressive, play a bit more of a possession game. So it's interesting to see. I think now Spurs obviously play Leicester on the weekend now, which is obviously going to be another tough game.
Yeah.
But then after that, Spurs have got a fairly decent run, I think, until late January when the next big game is against Liverpool, but now obviously at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see the kind of football that Jose sets us up for now against the smaller sides. That could be a very interesting little debate between how you play football against the big six and how you play football against everyone else.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure. I don't think we know the answer yet, but it will be interesting to see as the season goes. Because I would like to see Tottenham play that much more attacking style. I think they have what it takes. But it's working so far. So you can't really argue why they should switch. They are in second place and they did nearly just beat Liverpool. So but
obviously something's going right.
Yeah.
But sure, I guess on to the next game. That's all that the Spurs players and all the Liverpool players can do now. But I definitely think Jurgen Klopp will be looking forward to the end of this December period now, and hopefully he can get some of his midfielders back. I think
So actually, I think Mourinho also had a comment on the injury list of Liverpool, because I kind of agree with him on it, because he was saying that Liverpool don't really have an injury problem, and then he listed out all these players. They basically have their entire attacking team. They have AlexanderArnold, they have Alisson. He said the only real injury they have is Van Dijk. And you can argue Thiago Silva, but he hadn't integrated into the team. Like he played one game. So
exactly.
I kind of agree with him. Like the only real solid centerpiece of that team that's missing is Van Dijk, and he makes a huge difference. Yeah. But other than that, they had basically their entire team.
I mean, on the topic of Thiago, would he walk into that midfield three? Assuming now if your midfield three is Henderson, Fabinho, and Wijnaldum,
it's tough.
Would he walk into that midfield?
It's tough.
I mean, he'd probably take Wijnaldum's position. But
I don't even know, hey? Wijnaldum's also is really good.
No, he's a fantastic player. But I mean, just in terms of like the creative side of it, that's probably where you'd play.
It's tough.
I mean, I noticed during this game now against Tottenham that Sissoko, Lo Celso, Højbjerg, it was almost as if they'd signaled out Wijnaldum as the guy that they're going to go in hard on.
Yeah, I think
right from the start, there were big tackles on him. You could see he was getting frustrated. So I think they'd signal him out as this is the guy who's going to run the midfield for Liverpool. So,
which I kind of agree.
100%.
I think
Wijnaldum was a seriously underrated player.
Absolutely, I think
he's one of the best midfielders.
Forget stats. Forget all the stats. I think he has a huge role there.
Little question for you here. Last week we spoke about our little De Bruyne versus Bruno Fernandes debate. Do you think you could throw Wijnaldum into that mix? Obviously, I don't think his stats are as good as theirs, but I mean, certainly work rate and the kind of team player that he is, kind of look at it from a different aspect.
Yeah, it does change. I think I'll probably, gut feeling is still to stick with Bruno. Yeah. It's difficult though, because Bruno's a pure cam. He is a 10, and his job is to create chances and to score goals, which he does really, really well. So it's hard to debate that. We already settled the Kevin De Bruyne aspect of that, so it's really just Bruno versus Wijnaldum. And I mean, I think they play slightly different positions, so it's kind of hard to argue. If you had to just make a squad and pick one between these two, I think I'd probably still go with Bruno, just because it's always good to have a player who can score goals. But even though Wijnaldum has a great work rate and he's a centerpiece in the midfield of Liverpool, I think, at least from what we've seen so far, Bruno is less irreplaceable than Wijnaldum.
Yeah.
So you could put Thiago in Wijnaldum's situation, or in his spot, and you'd probably get an 85% match. You'd probably get close to what you get with Wijnaldum. But you can't put many players in Bruno's spot and expect them to do what he's doing at Man United. So, what's your take on that?
No, I'd agree with you on that. I think obviously different positions, different roles in the respective midfields, but overall, I think Bruno would be my pick. And then would I pick Wijnaldum over De Bruyne?
Yeah.
On current form, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's an interesting one.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see how Liverpool play when Thiago comes back. Obviously, they've got other players as well. I know Oxlade-Chamberlain was back on the bench now. He's been out for a while. Yeah. But I think...
And Jota.
Can't forget Jota. I think he'll be missed. I think he's out till February. February. So
get that Premier League or Fantasy League swap in right now.
Yeah,
I'm one of those.
Listen to your own advice.
I'm listening to my own advice.
Yep.
Get him out of the squad. No, it's interesting. I mean, I think about Thiago Silva sometimes when he used to play at Bayern Munich.
Alcantara.
Yes.
Not Silva. Alcantara.
Yes. Come on, man. I think about when he was at Bayern, and I think about the fast pace that Bayern plays, because they're kind of similar to Liverpool, that they play a really fast,
Well, if you kind of just compare position, you look at their front three: Lewandowski, Firmino, Gnabry, Salah, Mane, Sané, or Perisic, or
very fast players.
Player they decide to go with Coman. Then you look at their midfield, obviously Thiago from one to the next. Then you've got the enforcers like Henderson, you've got Martinez. So I think, especially also if you look at the wing backs, so that they play with Kimmich and Alaba or Davies,
very
and
similar.
compare them to Trent and to Robertson.
Very similar.
But
the weird thing for me is how when he was there, I keep thinking, how will Thiago fit into Liverpool's pace? Right, like, because Thiago strikes me as, at least in the half an hour, the 45 minutes that he played in that first game, he strung together all these passes, but he was very relaxed and very just chilled out. I'm sure that was the instruction. It wasn't to go all out and
I think that's also his game. He's a baller.
But this is the thing: is now I forget that he used to be at Bayern, and Bayern was also fast paced. So I'm like, how did he play? How will he play at Liverpool? But he's coming from an environment that was more or less the same. But the thing is, with what you were saying, with will he walk into the starting team? I mean, eventually it gets to a point where you might have a player that's better than one of the starting players for Liverpool's first 11, but you won't play him because that player has just been in the cycle for long enough.
Yeah.
So someone like Henderson or Wijnaldum, who are both great players, well, they won't be replaced because they are entrenched in Liverpool's system. Like, it just works. Don't fix something that's not broken. So even if you could bring in a player that's better than one of them, why? Exactly. Why would you? They it's working. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, it's really difficult to argue why you would buy another player or replace them unless you have a very, very long-term vision of what you're going to do to completely shift what they're doing. But even
that's not Thiago.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, it's interesting because obviously they've got great midfielders. I mean, then you think of the guys who don't even get in. I mean, Naby Keita just coming back from injury, he was on the bench. The workhorse that is James Milner.
I think when he got to Liverpool, there was something, I might be wrong about the exact amount of time, but when Keita got to Liverpool, it took like 9 months before he actually started properly playing for them.
I'm not too sure about Keita, but I know with Fabinho waited a long time before he actually cemented himself in that midfield.
Yeah, so that's probably that's the idea, is you're getting a player, and maybe there's a sort of a theory of like player, what's the word, like replacement, like, how employees leave companies, what's the word, like retrenchment, not retrenchment, but the rate at which people just keep coming in and out of the system. Like, there are going to be players who leave the club, whether you like it or not. So you got to have this constant flow of whether you like it or not, players are going to come in and replace the players you have right now. So so it might be a long time before we actually see Thiago playing consistently in that team.
Yeah, I think by default he'll be a substitute at least. Obviously, game situation depending, but I think, I don't know why you wouldn't bring him on.
Yeah,
I mean, it's one of the best midfield. He bossed the Bayern midfield.
Yeah, he did.
You saw in the Champions League final and the semi-finals. Man will get the ball. He say, you want the ball? Okay, you get the ball. You want the ball? You want the ball? Okay, well, you get the ball. Give me the ball back now. I'm going to make a run. You get the ball.
Yeah.
So to have someone of his quality, I think starting lineup, coming on at 45 minutes, come on at 60 minutes, I think we'll see him week in and week out. Obviously, now it just takes how long he gets back up to match fitness and we see him again. Hopefully you see him before the end of the year.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was the match of the week, probably of this weekend as well. I think this was a huge game.
Yeah.
Maybe last thing to touch on is the celebration of Liverpool winning that game.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing as what happened when Man U beat Southampton and how amped they were that they won that game. And then the coach was saying, based on the sounds that the players were making in the change room, you'd swear they won the Champions League, or won the league. It felt almost the same in this game.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because Mourinho made some comments about Klopp and saying, if it was him celebrating, he'd get in trouble for it and all that. But I think if you look at the bigger picture, to celebrate like that, you don't just celebrate like that. You won't see Liverpool celebrating like that after beating Burnley or Sheffield United. So I think, obviously they know at that moment in time, Tottenham were top of the table. They're the closest title challenges that they had. So obviously from that regard, it's a big win for them. Because now, out of those two, they are the better team. They are first, Tottenham are second.
Yeah.
Obviously, also, I guess there's the emotion of being a 90th minute winner. You know, you work so hard for 90 minutes and you finally get that end goal. Everyone's excited. Also, fans are back. A lot of guys are excited to put on a show for the fans, so that might be a thing. But I think also, if you look at it from the sense that Liverpool see Tottenham as a legitimate title challenger this season, that they show this was a good win.
Yeah.
This was a tough match. Tottenham fought hard. We came with the 3 points. It's a big 3 points. We're excited about it. I think that shows the level at which Tottenham are and this respect that Liverpool have for the Tottenham side.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah, I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but
I think Klopp is also just a very
he's very animated and very
animated.
He gets involved.
Character.
This is Liverpool is his club.
Yeah.
So that's obviously also one of the things you saw when he was at Dortmund, when he joined Liverpool, all of that.
Yeah. But even besides this game, it's that's the thing. It's in his nature that he just is a very animated person. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with celebrating, but it definitely did look like you could see they were all very, very happy that they won this game.
Yes.
90th minute goal aside, they were very, very flamboyant. What's the word? Like flamboyant about this. So but I mean, credit to them. So they won the game. Then there's something else. This is not Liverpool Tottenham now. This is something else that was released.
We won't bug you guys with that.
Yeah, that's over. The Champions League draw has been announced. And there's some interesting matchups there.
Some interesting matchups. Also some conspiracy theories as well.
Let me hear it.
So obviously, everyone knows the saga that's been going on with Neymar. You know, obviously not happy at PSG. He wants to play with Messi again. Everything that's been going on with Barcelona and Messi wants to leave now. And obviously now PSG and Bayern and Barca get drawn together.
Yeah. What's the chances?
Exactly. That's what people are saying. It's like, oh, that's a bit too good to be true. You know, what are the chances of all of that kind of stuff happening? So it's interesting. Also, I know Borussia Mönchengladbach, their Twitter admin posted a bit of a comical tweet. He listed that in I think there's lots two Champions Leagues. I might be wrong on this, but certainly 2 of the previous Champions League group stages they've been involved with City. And then now all of a sudden this season there's no City in their group. Boom, round of 16 gets to draw City. So that whether that's a conspiracy theory or that's just dumb luck or whatever.
Yeah, but this is what I've said also. How many times have you seen Real Madrid and Atletico play against each other in the Champions League? I've seen like 4 years.
Yeah.
Right, in the last 10 years of them playing against each other. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, the chances of that.
The chances of that is so slim, but yet it always happens. And I think it's just by the nature of the way that the draw is done. It's not that maybe there's something happening, I don't know, but I think there are only so many combinations. You can only be drawn against so many teams, and it's always the same teams every year, that obviously there is a high chance of you playing the same team. But with at least the new format of the Champions League that they want to go forward on, that's going to completely eliminate this from happening. Because if you finish first,
it's purely on finishing.
It's purely based on that. So exactly. So you'll know immediately who you're going to play against based on where you finish in the log, versus this sort of like, oh well, who might I play? And then there's always going to be questions of conspiracies around who plays who, because it does feel kind of too good to be true to see PSG against Barca again. And in some way, I don't want to see them play again. Like I would like to see. When was the last time you saw Real Madrid against PSG?
No, exactly. When was the last time you saw Bayern against Real Madrid?
Yeah, exactly.
So, there
are matchups that I think would be interesting to see. Obviously, with the new format, that doesn't guarantee that you'll get to see them either, but probably you will get the same.
Yeah.
Probably going to see the same games. But, so there are quite a few interesting games in the Champions League that's coming up.
There are a few.
Juventus against Porto, which is also quite an interesting one.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think it's quite funny because probably every team was rooting for either matching up with Porto or matching up with Mönchengladbach. It's one of those two. If you got them, you're like, yes.
Yeah, that's the favourable draw.
Quarters, here we go. So.
Yeah, also that kind of little Portuguese rivalry there with Ronaldo, obviously going back, from Sporting Lisbon now against Porto, one of their big rivals.
Yeah.
Bit of it.
Into that. I cannot see Porto getting through that. I just can't. But you never know. So.
Yeah, you never know what happens. Football is football. Ronaldo missed a penalty now in the league, so. Football is football.
What do you mean? It never happened.
It was all a dream.
Yeah, I don't know what you're watching. Yeah.
But yeah, no, some interesting matchups. I think it'll be some spicy football. Can't say the same really about Europa League. Probably most notable fixture or draw is the Benfica against Arsenal. I think everything else is pretty.
I'm very, very happy as a Benfica supporter. I'm very, very happy with this draw. I think it's quite favourable. Actually, not really. I mean, Arsenal have had good form in the Europa League so far.
They had a perfect group stage.
Yeah. So, however that works, I don't know. That you can have good form in Europa League, but you can't score in Premier League. I don't know. But yeah, I'm quite excited to see them go through. Yeah. Tottenham's matched up against
the Austrian side called Wolfsberger. I've never heard of them.
Never heard of them.
But I think another way Europa League goes, or the tiny teams, they get drawn against the Premier League sides, and they always get excited.
Yeah.
I think another interesting matchup will be the other English club who's now dropped down from the Champions League, Manchester United. They've been drawn against the Real Sociedad, who obviously up until now were top of La Liga.
Yeah.
So, and obviously David Silva's there putting the strings. So
honestly, amazing that player.
Honestly,
what caliber?
Oh,
yes,
world class player, that man. I think that'll be an interesting little match.
Yeah, that'll be good to watch. Yeah.
I
think that's pretty much everything for this week. More games coming up this weekend.
Yeah, another big matches this weekend. I think Tottenham need to beat Leicester. Liverpool obviously be hoping to increase the gap even more. I'm sure Chelsea, Everton, City, United, they'll all be hoping that they don't drop points now. I think everyone's kind of a bit concerned about that.
Yeah, the pressure's on now because now it's the first gap in the league. Now there's a 3-point gap between first and second. So now it's the pressure's on. Don't let the gap increase.
Yeah, and I think Southampton will be pushing as well. They're on some brilliant form at the moment. So I think if they can string together a couple more wins and really hang up in the top half of the table, I think they'll be very happy. Yeah,
it's really who wants it, because
that's what it's coming down.
There are 8 teams that right at the top that are really close together, and it's just who's coming to the party right now.
That's exactly what it is. That's which team wants it more at the moment. It's been a funny season. Last season, obviously, Liverpool walked away with it right from the start.
Now
you've got basically the top half of the table is all fighting for the title at the moment. And we're a third of the season, so it's obviously you still got lots of football to play, but 13 matches in.
It's still substantial. It's still substantial.
So I think this is certainly going to probably be one of the more entertaining finishes to a Premier League season. It'll be a good one.
Yeah.
Cool.